Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Aditi from the Global Wildlife Fair team. Global Wildlife Fair is a platform that connects tour operators, ecologists, photographers, and storytellers from around the world. We celebrate exploration of the natural world, discovering new landscapes and new perspectives, while bringing together people who share a passion for nature. At its core, Global Wildlife Fair is about building a community that learns, travels, and grows together. As a part of these webinar series, we will invite our exhibitors to present their work and share insights from the field. Today's session features Pardus Wild-Tech, one of our exhibitors working at the intersection of wildlife conservation and technology in India. Pardus is addressing a critical challenge in conservation by developing India's first wildlife monitoring and early warning systems that are affordable, ethical, and designed for real field conditions. Our speaker today is Dhruvam Desai, wildlife technologist, conservation entrepreneur, and founder of Pardus. He works closely with forest departments, researchers, and grassroots conservationists, and brings deep field experience into the design of practical conservation led technology solutions. I now invite Mr. Dhruvam Desai to begin today's session. Over to you, sir.
Hi, good evening. Thanks, Aditi, for the introduction. All right, let's begin. I'll just share my screen. All right. So, first of all, thank you to Global Wildlife Fair for giving me this opportunity to talk about something that I'm so passionate about. I've been in touch with the forest department, with wildlife researchers almost all my life. And it's a real privilege to create something which is customized for them, for Indian field, for the Indian biomes, so that they can provide more input, provide more solutions to the rising man-animal conflict, and so on and so forth. So this is what my topic will be: technology for ethical field-ready conservation. So before we quickly start, how many of you all know what Pardus means or what Pardus stands for? Okay, I don't think we answer, so I'll just go ahead. Pardus is the scientific name for the Indian leopard, Panthera pardus. That's where the name Pardus stands for. And Pardus, being leopard, is the most easy, the most available species in India across many different habitats. You can see them in cities, you can see them in mangroves, in grasslands, in deep forests, rainforests, and even as far as above 4,000 meters recently in Bhutan. So the goal for Pardus Wild-Tech was always to be adaptable, be everywhere available in India, so that even if our technology breaks down on field, which of course happens a lot, we are there to help support these people who are toiling around in the field for hours and days and months. Right. So before we head in, I would just like to show this beautiful picture from Nagaland about this beautiful waterfall that we came across during our field visits with the cameras. And this really shows you why we are in this field, right? We want to see this landscape flourish. We want to see these waterfalls flowing with fresh water down the streams, carrying nutrients, having and hosting so much wildlife in them. And this is what we're fighting for. And this is what we're creating our technology for. So there are many hurdles in wildlife technology in India, of course. I started Pardus about 4 years ago. And before starting out, I had a lot of field experience with the existing technology, with the existing camera traps. And I could also see the interaction of the forest department, of the researchers with those technology. So these are some of the hurdles that we have identified along the way. So number one is affordability. Having a camera trap in India, especially at grassroots level, is a privilege. And that once that privilege kicks in, then the data accumulated is in the hands of the few. And once you privatize that data, conservation becomes a big challenge. So the idea here was to create something which everybody can use so that we have more eyes on the field. Number two is the temperature variations. We have the Thar, which touches almost 50 degrees Celsius. and we suddenly have the great Himalayas where you get -30, -40 degree temperatures. And these technologies that are available right now are just not ready to handle that amount of stress. Of course, we do have technology that works in Thar, that works in the Himalayas separately, but we do not have technology which works as a blanket everywhere. Number three is security, of course, with the rising population that we have, shrinking forests that we have, monitoring them becomes crucial. And you can't really monitor these devices or get the data if the devices are stolen on field. So a lot of times, even during our prototyping efforts and testing them out on field, I would say we've created around 30 to 35 units of camera traps, and about 13 of them were just stolen. So we have no idea what happened to them, what kind of data we got. Yeah. The next is weather, of course. So we have Cherrapunji, the wettest place on earth, which gets a record-breaking humidity, record-breaking rainfall. And incidentally, there is a huge gap in the Northeast as well, where you don't have a lot of data. So we need technology that can penetrate these hard-to-get places, sustain themselves over there, create data that is crucial for conservation, and get those data to scientists, researchers, and policymakers effectively. And the next and last but not the least, of course, is how the data gets processed. It's a very nuanced subject on the matter of fact that data for camera trapping is not just pretty pictures. It's data about the species, the location, the time, the temperature, the humidity, what the moon phase was. So these are the things that really complete the package of camera trapping endeavor or camera trapping project. So these five things are somewhere missing in the current models of camera traps and the current models of wildlife technology in general. So give you a brief global technology versus Indian forests, because this was a gap that we had to bridge somehow. So global technology right now is, if you talk about global technology just as a whole, then global technology is advancing at a very rapid rate. You have record-breaking feats of engineering broken every day by the army, by the military, by the people, the defense people. And then you have technology for wildlife, which has not been evolved since the last 15 to 20 years. Even the big name brands that are currently in play right now in India, protecting our forest, collecting data, have not been changed since the last 7 to 8 years at all. So if you see, since 2018 or 2017, when the new technology had come in, we were able to adapt them. But our adoption of the technology has been so slow that they are not, like, they are comfortable with not innovating, right? We are using whatever they have, whatever they're giving, and they're just not developing. Whereas in the Indian forest, if you see, we have such magnitude of diversity. We have the Western Ghats, we have the northeast of India, where you get rainfall, badgering humidity, and places like these are hard to sustain technology because of the humidity. Humidity easily penetrates the devices, rusts the components, and reduces the shelf life of the technology. Then you have the Thar Desert, the Central Indian Forest, where in the summer, especially, we've seen with a few of our prototypes that the 3D printed enclosures were melting out because it used to get so hot, so brutally hot without any humidity, just zero humidity, brutal heat. And then you suddenly have the Ladakh, Trans-Himalayan regions touching -20, -30 during the winter time. And the main challenge over there is that the colder it gets, the lesser the battery capacity becomes. So if say in Mumbai, where our manufacturing is based right now, we are getting 2 months of battery life on a single charge. You can expect at a -20 or -30 range to be around 5 to 6 days. So how do you customize the technology so that it works in these diverse backgrounds? That is the real challenge. And that is what we are trying to accomplish through this. So at the end of the day, who is the end user, right? Who is the person who is going on field, putting it up? What are the challenges that they face? That is the real question. So number one is the forest department and the forest guards. In forest department, you have the beat guards who do a patrolling duty around their specific their specific beat, So beat is basically a stretch of 5 to 10 kilometers assigned to each beat guard that they have to monitor on foot. So they'll be on foot checking for animal signs, checking for break entries and from the fencing areas, if there's any human activity over there, stuff like that. So they are the end users over there. They are the persons who are day in and day out in the field, on the field, surveying their area, reporting back to the headquarters and saying, okay, this is the progress and this is what we need. Number two is the NGOs, of course. Small scale NGOs, big scale NGOs, everyone who is in India right now creating some sort of policy for conservation in wildlife is using camera traps currently. If you take names such as Sanctuary Asia with their Mud on the Boots project, then we have WTI with their massive deployment of camera traps in the Tadoba Andhari region. So they are also using camera traps. Number three is the community. So of course, the various communities who are surrounding small pockets of unprotected areas in wildlife also use these, and you also use the technology. But at the end of the day, who does this benefit, right? Of course, you have data, you are getting the images, you're feeling good about it, but then what of it? What becomes of it? So the end user is actually you, because the data that we get, the amount of research that is done, and the policies that we get out of it are in the end affecting you. For example, in Sanjay Gandhi National Park in Mumbai, there's a massive camera trapping survey done, a massive radio collaring survey done on the 48 leopards around 2020 to 21. During that time, we found that out of the 48 leopards, 11 leopards were roaming into the city. 30% of the territory lies outside the protected land. Now, that kind of data is very critical to ensure that there are no man-animal conflicts, to ensure the forest department is aware. Okay, these number of leopards are going out into these certain areas where we need to keep a lookout for. So cases like that is where technology, really helps the end user, which is every citizen, you included. So throughout the years, data collection has plateaued. Now, what do I mean by that? Data collection right now on a regular basis is done for tigers by the NTC, National Tiger Conservation Authority of India. And every 2 years, they do a census. Okay, how many tigers do we have in our protected zones? They go to each tiger reserve, tiger sanctuary, set up camera traps on a 10 by 10 kilometer grid, spend around 6 to 7 months easily collecting data on their particular grids, and then giving a report, okay, these many tigers are there in India. But what about the smaller species? What about the lesser known species that are hard to find, species that exist outside these tiger areas? Now, if we talk about lesser areas, let's say, for example, Northeast India, the Eastern Ghats especially, you have very few tiger reserves over there, but you have more isolated wildlife sanctuaries where tigers are devoid of existence. And in those areas, the critical point becomes how to conserve these areas if we don't have data over there. So now India has just kind of plateaued around the point where we are only collecting data of the tigers. Of course, smaller mammals and birds that are caught during the tiger survey is also reported, but there is no dedicated data center where wildlife sanctuaries are reported, while bird sanctuaries reported. Of course, NGOs are trying their best to get there, but there's no centralized area. So why is that? Why has the data collection plateaued is the question. So number one is affordability. Again, the moment you increase the price of something, the people, especially the smaller NGOs, people who are working on the grassroots level, they cannot really afford a 17,000, 18,000 camera trap. They buy one, they don't have the budget for it. So what they do is they just buy one, they keep on using, until one fine day it gets destroyed or it gets stolen. So at that point, once it gets destroyed or stolen, the data collection just ends, abruptly just ends, because there is no support for these technologies. Everything that we have right now is either imported or brought from China. So that's the real thing. If we're able to reduce the price, then we're able to also increase eyes on the field, increase cameras on the field, increase vigilance on the field, so that we can create more data, generate more data, create policies, know what the baseline data collection is at every sanctuary. Number two is availability, approachability. Now, if you've handled the ones that are available in the market right now that are imported, they're extremely tough to use. They have bunch of buttons, bunch of settings, and oftentimes and not, the beat guards who are given these technology don't really know how to use them. Even though they go through training, it's so complicated to use. I've seen so many cases, especially in the northeastern part, where the camera trap is still in the pack. It's not even been opened yet because it's too complicated to use. They rather spot the species through eyesight, mark it on their that biodiversity sheet, and hand that over to the headquarters. So the technology that we have should be affordable, should be approachable in terms of user friendliness, and of course available. Because the moment a camera trap as expensive as 17 to 18,000 gets damaged, gets stolen, you are stuck. The funding that you're getting for that particular project to collect data is dried up because that amount of resource you have put up in the camera trap and it's no longer there. So in that scenario, you have two options. You can either fall back to a cheaper Chinese product, which you know will be damaged in the other 3 to 4 months, or in pay more to send it back to a foreign country, get it repaired, and then send it over back. I mean, I have been getting calls from these big NGOs and foreign departments asking if I can repair the other company's equipment, because that is so prevalent. Now, let's say there's a wildlife sanctuary having 10 tigers, right? So the 10 tigers, they get budget based on the number of tigers you have in the sanctuary from the center. So especially in a small sanctuary, the amount of people wandering into the forest to collect firewood, to collect just herbs and fruits is way more. So in these scenarios, the person who's collecting firewood will not go into the forest to hunt for camera traps. They just chance buy it, they pick it up and they sell it off in the market. So in that scenario, then we have to be vigilant enough so that companies like us, companies like Pardus can step in and say, okay, if it's damaged, then we are able to send you a replacement quickly. We're able to get the unit back and repair it on ground, send it back to you so that your data collection doesn't stop. So that's the pivot plan. So by creating technologies in India, wholly centralizing the manufacturing in India itself, everything from the components to the IR LEDs to the flaps to the enclosures to the even the IP of the coding needs to be in India, so that number one, you can customize it in aspect of what species that they're targeting, what habitat are they deploying, and if it's, let's say if it's in Ladakh, we can have an extra padded layer to decrease the thermal load on the processors. We can have, if it's in Thar, we can add a coolant inside to keep the processor chip cool and stable in hotter environments, and so on and so forth. So that's a pivot plan that we're pushing for. And that begs the question of what kind of design philosophy do we need? Number one, as of course, it should be affordable, because as I said, if you price it at the premium range of around 20 to 22,000, yes, people will buy it, we'll have a big profit, we'll have a party, but then there is no real result on ground. There is no more data coming in. We're still contributing to that plateau of data. We're still contributing to lack of data. There is no real effect of it on ground. So if we want to see more effect on ground, we need to reduce the price. So number one, be affordable. Number two is give quick service. In India, especially, we have a beautiful network of couriers and delivery partners everywhere, with Shiprocket, with India Post, with DTDC. They can get you to places that I personally have never heard of, right? So we are planning to utilize them so that if in case any device is damaged, if it in case the data gets corrupted, we are able to retrieve the devices, we are able to retrieve the SD cards, fix it, deal with the problem, and send it back to them. And if it takes too long, then we're also able to send them a replacement unit, so that at least their data collection does not hit a brick wall, so that their conservation and the kind of policy that are trying to push is going smoothly. Number two is has to be rugged. In India, especially with elephants, we have seen so many of our camera traps just being absolutely destroyed by elephants. I mean, we've seen complete camera trap just obliterated. The chips are just in a disarray. The lights are just trampled around. There's nothing left to it. So it needs to be durable. It needs to sustain and survive the harshness of Ladakh, the hot temperatures of Thar, and the humidity of Cherrapunji and Western Ghats. And then, of course, it needs to be tech forward. As I said, technology in this space has not really evolved since the last 15 to 20 years. It's high time that we bring in technology that is better suited to Indian conditions, that is forward in technology, so that we can give efficient and effective data that does not hamper or does not create friction for conservation. And of course, that's a big deal. We need our devices to be secure. If we put a white flash unit that flashes every time there's a movement in the forest, a passerby will just know, okay, there's a camera trap, I'll just pick it up. That's easy money for them. So we need technology that is secure, that is anti theft, so that the quick service part doesn't even arise. We can employ a lot more technological advancements in this field as well. And of course, quick service, customizations, anything that the researcher or the grassroots conservation needs. Because, I mean, if you have, so let's say, for example, we have the color black for a camera trap. It might work in a very dense kind of forest habitat with a lot of canopy and evergreen forest type, such as in Western Ghats or in rainforests of Northeast India. But that will not work in Thar. That will not work in a brown or a beige grassland. It will just pop out like a sore thumb. That will draw attention. That will lead to the device being stolen. So since we are manufacturing it in India, we have the flexibility of customizing the enclosure. We have the flexibility of customizing even the coding part. Where, okay, if you want to take pictures of the trigger only in the daytime, we can do that. Only the night time, we can do that. If you want, let's say, a higher megapixel count camera, we can do that. If you want an alarm going off, if there's any stealing being done, so we can do that. So customizations are a big part, especially in India with varied habitats and biome. So with this design philosophy in mind, we then curated the recs, if we'll talk about in the later part. So broadly speaking, again, there are two conservation models in India. One is a fortress model and one is a CBC model. Okay. CBC stands for community-based conservation. So in India, especially, we have fortress model, which is very prominent, which has defined spaces bound by geography. So think about your tiger reserves, your wildlife sanctuaries, or bird sanctuaries that are deemed by the government. They're easier to survey, protect, and study, of course, since you have a physical boundary, physical fence going across the fortress. There is a lesser risk of poachers entering. There's a lesser risk of the species walking out of the forest. Of course, now we have more of that happening, but that's due to several other reasons. And of course, we have a well-formed hierarchy for vigilance. We have beat guards, we have RFOs, we have DFOs, we have directors, then so on and so forth. So we have a very structured kind of a model where to ensure a species or a group of species or a habitat gets sustained. Now, let's talk about tiger reserves, right? Tiger reserves, of course, we are pitching tigers as an umbrella species, wherein if you conserve one species, you're conserving the habitat and you're conserving everything that is under the habitat. So if you're able to contain the tigers in a geographic boundary, defined boundary, then the work for the forest department, the work for the NGOs, the work for the grassroots conservation becomes lesser because you only have to monitor that around that specific perimeter, and that's it. Now coming to the CBC model, it's an open boundary concept allowing animals to move freely. Of course, this greatly improves migration. This greatly improves cross-genial breeding between communities. Now, if you take a downside of fortress model will be Gir. So Gir is the only place, only density of lions anywhere in the world for Asiatic lions. And the gene pool has become so saturated that there is a 0.01 point deviation between the genes. And that is extremely critical for the survival of the species. If there's even one virus or even one flu spreading among the lines, the entire population is at the risk of decimation. So it is extremely essential that we create such small pockets, such small passageways, so that the lions can migrate out, create more diverse genetic pools, so that we don't run the risk of completely decimating a population. So of course, CBC model provides that amount of freedom, that they are open to move, open to use passageways, open to use buffer areas to move around uh, fortress models and integrate with other gene pools. Of course, and practices rooted in traditional customs. Think about Devrais in the Western Ghats. Think about the Wagoba culture, which is extremely unique. Talking about Wagoba culture in Sanjay Gandhi National Park, especially, since Sanjay Gandhi National Park is the highest density of leopards anywhere in the world, it is extremely crucial that when a leopard moves out, faces leopard man animal conflict, it is crucial for the forest department to understand the sentiment of the person who is being harmed, of the leopard, the community as well. So Wagoba culture quite literally reveres a feline deity. It can be a tiger, it can be a leopard. It just needs to be a feline deity which represents the voice of the forest. So if you wander around the Konkan area, even in Tadoba now, the practice has nicely integrated. If you go around those areas, you will see a Vagoba shrine. So when you talk to the locals and try to understand why it is done, it was basically started as a deity, a guardian deity for the forest. So anytime the locals want to step into these forests, they first ask the Vagoba shrine, okay, do we have permission to enter? This is why we're entering. Do we have your protection to enter? And that is how they were used to. Now, when more and more leopards started wandering out of the forests, the local community knew the answer. Okay, even though you are telling that you will remove the leopards from Sanjay Gandhi National Park, dump them into some place else, they'll still find a place back home. And even though the forest department, the conservation did not know about this, the locals knew through the Wagoba culture that, okay, if you remove the leopard will come back to his own forest. And in fact, in 2012 or 2013, they actually had removed a leopard and relocated him to Tungareshwar Wildlife Sanctuary, which is across the creek that we have in Mumbai. And somehow that leopard walked all the way, which is around, I think, 20-25 kilometers of highways, of roads, of creeks. He just wandered back in the matter of a month. He found his way back, and there he was. So that is where the CBC model shines. You have decades and decades and centuries of knowledge about these wildlife animals that can really help conservation. And number three is conserves wildlife and communities. In marginalized communities across India, you have the Baiga community in Bandhavgarh, you have the Gond in Madhya Pradesh, you have the Toda community in the Uti and the Sholas of Western Ghats. These communities live so closely with the habitat, so closely with the wildlife around them, that they have the answer to everything. Even if we sitting in front of laptops using chat gpt will not have such data, such amount of stories, such amount of knowledge for them as much as the tribal and the local communities do, because they've been living with these habitats, living with these areas. So best example is Bugun Leo Chikla Conservation Project, which was a tourism project again done with the Bugun tribe. So Bugun Leo Chikla was the first bird to be found or discovered after India's independence. And now I think there are only 12 pairs left in the entire world, restricted to that eagle nest bird sanctuary patch. And what the forest department has done is that they've handed over the conservation of the habitat to the Bugun community. So the name Bugun Leo Chikla is a species, and the Bugun word comes from the Bugun community that is available over there. So the Bugun community took up training the naturalists, training the locals into being naturalists, showing the tourists around in their land, telling them stories about it. And that creates such a good experience for any birder, any enthusiast who is stepping into that zone, because then you know, okay, even though I live in Mumbai, I live in Delhi, Bangalore, or any city, the things that they are facing on a day-to-day basis is completely different. How many times have you come across a viper in your shoe sitting in the cities? So that is the stories, and how to get the viper out of your shoe, how to track animals using the scent through your nose. Immense amount of knowledge. So these are the two conservation models that we have in India. And India is such a unique blend where both of these models are coexisting very well, harmoniously. Of course, CBC model doesn't have the kind of legitimacy that the fortress model gives in terms of protection, sanctuaries. And we have a lot of cases of destruction of forests like Hasdev, um, where since they're not notified, they're being denotified, trampled over, and tribal communities are losing their roots. So, of course, still Fortress model and CBC model are a cohesive rare case in India, and we would like to keep it that way. So, how do we keep it that way using technology? So, the tech requirements for both of these places are extremely different, right? For the CBC model, of course, there is more theft. You need to create discrete systems, and they innately have to be rugged and data secure. If so, in the academic world, there's a big fight. Okay, so if two people are working on the same thesis about, let's say, a tiger, they'll be so secure about their data, they will not be open to sharing the data points, sharing the images across each other. So in that scenario, it becomes very crucial to keep the data secure for them. Tech which is rooted and easy to understand. Since everybody has a phone right now, they all know how to switch buttons on and off. They all know how to see blinking lights. Start there. Why to keep such complex technology that even people sitting in the cities who are interacting with this sort of technology on a day-to-day basis don't know how to operate? So why not create rooted technologies, create very easy to understand technology so that there are more eyes on the field, less to no training required for them. And of course, the quantities of units will be small due to budget constraints. So you cannot keep a 20,000 rupee camera trap in a CBC model area because you know it's going to get stolen. So people will not even keep data points in the CBC model areas. So areas like those just get looked over. Whereas in Fortress model, there's a less threat of theft. That does happen, unfortunately, but lesser threat of theft because the devices are sealed in a fortress, so to speak. And of course, they require white flash cameras. White flash, so in camera trapping, there are two variations of cameras: white flash and IR flash or black flash. A white flash is a typical white, uh, just a beam of light that is thrown onto the subject, and that creates really good images, really textured lines, especially the tigers, since they recognize individuals using the patterns of the stripes. It gives really distinct and very crisp lines on the stripes, and easier for the software system that NTCA, the government, is using to identify tigers. And on the flip side, we have black flashes. Black flashes use an infrared technology, which is 940 nm wavelength light, which is invisible for humans and for animals. So it's a very non-obtrusive way of collecting data. Right now, we have technology of IR cameras and IR sensors that way outperform the traditional white flash cameras. But as I said, technology has not moved in India, especially with this old legacy systems where IR cameras are still not proficient enough. The white flash cameras are still ruling the tiger sanctuaries. So if you're anytime in the gypsies, in and around Bandhavgarh in the Magdi zone, you will always find one camera trap which just goes off every time your jeep passes, and it's a real jump scare for anybody who is not aware of it. And of course, they have surveillance deployments. They have multiple technologies in play with drones now, with AI powered monitoring systems for elephants, which cost about 2 to 2.5 lakhs based on the system. So what they do is basically they install it on train tracks, railway tracks, They monitor and automatically identify if an elephant is on the tracks and notify the railway authority, okay, there's an elephant on this particular track. Please inform the train to slow down or to stop for a while till the elephant goes. And the system gives a clear. So that is where the surveillance deployments are rampant. Of course, they have much larger funds than the CVC model, and they have the ability to train their field staff as well. They have training every month on especially for the beat guards to understand more about wildlife, understand more about the scientific way of doing things, a Western scientific way of doing things. And of course, they can afford a large quantity of deployments. But in Fortress model, when tech gets damaged, it's highly difficult to get it repaired. You have these 25,000 cameras that gets destroyed due to elephants, gets destroyed due to a sloth bear. In these scenarios, if it gets damaged, it's gone. Out of, let's say, 100 camera traps, one is gone. You cannot reuse it at all. That hampers data collection. And on the CBC model, the tech is extremely expensive, leading to smaller deployments, which leads to a massive lack of data. So once you increase the price of technology, deployments get selective. And once the deployment gets selective, it's extremely hard for you to get good data. So let's learn more about camera trapping, what actually goes behind camera trapping, how to do it. So number one is to identify. How to identify is using scratch marks, of course, leopards and civets, tigers, and most of the feline family have this habit of scratching the bark of the tree to mark their territories, and pug marks, of course. And of course, the most crucial evidence is scat, aka poop. So if you have scat in that area, felines especially like to have a designated zone or an area to defecate. So once you identify these places, okay, you have the identification done. You selected a spot. The next is to set up. You set up the camera trap on a tree, on a knee height. So why a knee height and not lower or more or less is because most of the wildlife lies in that medium belt. If you have anything, if you position it lower, you will only see the legs of a leopard. If you position it high, you will skip all the civets, you will skip the jungle fowls, you will skip all the mongooses that are going by you. So knee height is the industry standard that we follow. And of course, then you wait for a trigger. When an animal passes, you wait for a trigger. The camera captures it. The camera then stores the captures and labels them. Then you have to go to retrieve them. Now, retrieval also depends on the project timeline. So if let's say your project budget is only allowing you to spend time for a week or 2 weeks, you will get very poor quality of data because 2 weeks or 1 week space is not sufficient for camera trapping at all. You are easily looking at a 5 to 6 month period where the camera is just placed in one single spot, not being touched, not being tampered with any human ideally, and it will continue to retrieve data, continue to collect data. So at the end of the day, when you retrieve it, you have a much larger data set to sort through. And of course, analyze the data. What kind of data you are getting? How is it? Why is it? Question, invoke your curiosity, and repeat the entire process again. So to study animals before camera trapping was a big hassle. You basically have to get permission for tranquilizing the animal. Then you go on field, tranquilize the animal, touch it. You check biologically, invasively check the DNA spots. What kind of age is it? What kind of coat is it? What it is eating, etc. So it creates a huge pressure not only on the finances and the logistics, but it also creates a very non-conducive environment for the species that we're trying to protect. So camera trapping is a solution where you just set up a camera, it will automatically take pictures for you anytime there's a movement across the camera trap. And you can see okay, what kind of kill it is eating, how many times it is mating, is it in a pair, is it not in a pair? That kind of data is crucial. So what is this data that we're trying to do? And especially for scientific camera trapping, data is much more important than pretty pictures. So what does data collect? It collects timestamps, it collects date, time. That is the most crucial part. What time is the leopard moving out into the cities? What days are is it moving out into the cities? That is crucial for policy making. Then the species itself. Okay, what kind of species is it? Is it pregnant? Is it moving with kids? Is it with mating partners? Is it injured? If it's injured, then the forest department needs to send a team to help wildlife vets to help it heal and heal properly without causing pain. And at the end of the location, which area is it moving out from? What are the leak spots where the fortress model is failing? In CBC model, what kind of areas is the animal preferring? What time is it preferring to? So that you can tell the villagers, okay, don't move in this particular area because at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, this particular tiger moves out from here on these dates. So once you have the data set, it's very easy to create policies. It is very easy to see the patterns that wildlife is forming, and nature is very cyclic in that pattern. If you see a bird at, let's say, 4 o'clock every day, you will definitely see it at 4 o'clock every day. There's a cyclic pattern that nature follows. So once you have that pattern set, once you have that motion kind of set in your system, then you can create policies and you can really propel conservation forward. Now talking about what our learnings have been, what we are trying to do here, learning from whatever we have on field, what I have learned my years being on field, the forest department, that Rex is affordable. We are now going to, I'll come to that eventually. It's predictable. It won't fail on you. Of course, if it's damaged, it will fail on you, but it will have a predictable cycle. Okay, if it's raining, it will be predictable. If it is sunny, it will be predictable. It will give you no fluff field system. You don't have to think about it at all. Just fit it and forget it. Serviceable. Since we are manufacturing in Mumbai, in India, we're able to service our broken cameras. We're able to easily deploy it because we only have 3 buttons: on off, setting the distance on the PIR, and test mode. That's it. No need to run around with the PIR knob. No need to set the data points. No need to say, okay, how many triggers I want. It's all preset on industry benchmarks, and that just makes the life for the person using it much easier. And of course, it's weather stable. It has to be weather stable, simply because we are creating it specifically for the Indian biomes. We have rain, we have snow, we have heat, we have everything in India space basically. So it needs to be all these things. But of course, what the Rex is not. It is not a spec sheet king. It will not have 40 megapixel cameras. It will not have Wi-Fi. It will not have screens that you can see. Why not? Because it is not needed in India. India currently needs raw, serviceable data. Data is so crucial in India right now to create policies, and all these flashy gimmicks like 40 megapixel cameras, we don't really require them at all here. We require stability, we require predictability, we require the information to know, okay, if there is an elephant that is trampling a village, why is it trampling a village? What is it that it is going after? And a very interesting story out of Northeast India is that, out of Orissa, is that there was a family of a herd of elephants that used to raid the crops every year during the monsoon season for the sugar canes. And that led to a lot of conflict, a lot of loss of lives. But after installing camera traps, after installing systems that work, that understand why they are there, they employed a beautiful idea. They basically started planting additional sugar canes specifically for the elephants on the periphery of the boundaries, wherever the elephants are coming in from. Right. So how do they know where the elephants are coming from? Through camera traps. They create a whole grid around the village. They created a grid of camera traps around the village. They checked the camera traps for 6 to 7 months. Okay, they knew, okay, in this particular region, the elephants are coming from. Let's plant the sugar canes there. So once the elephants have their fill of sugar canes, they're less likely to come into the village and cause conflict. So that is the kind of data that we are needing, not these flashy, gimmicky technology that just sounds great on paper, sounds great and on the screens, but hold little to no value in terms of data. So of course, then it was our journey. It was our time to get our hands dirty and understand the fundamentals. So this was our first unit. Very clunky. It was weighing around 5 kilos at that time. So I was lugging around two pieces of this on my back into the forest, trying to see. So it had no tree holds. It had no tripod stand. It was just us trying to pitch it with rocks and making it stable. And it showed in the image. I mean, if you can see it clearly, there is a barking deer in this photo. But since we've not optimized the camera, it turns out pink. There's no contrast control, no brightness control. So there is a barking deer in there somewhere. There is, trust me on that. The images were just completely flipping, vertically flipping in the middle of data. Just you have tiger moving and suddenly it's inverted. So abnormalities like that. Then this is very important. We started monitoring the temperature of our chips in gear during peak summer, and the internal temperature that we got was 60 degrees Celsius, which is mind-blowingly insane that our chip was getting so hot, so as to melt the wires, to melt the entire system from the inside out. And of course, we learned from those, and we created smaller versions. We created a much compact version, multiple versions, so that we can put it across different habitats in India. And that was 3 years of back and forth. Us doing a small change in the lab, taking it out, putting it on field, checking it, then bringing it back, seeing what is working, seeing what is not working, working with the forest department, seeing what they require, working with the CBC communities, what they require, how they require it, why they require it, and working off of that. And then phase two was refinement. We created a much smaller, much compact version, which has thankfully had tree loops for us to pass on a decathlon belt through it, tie it up, get data. And it showed. This was the first good data we had of a Himalayan mast civet from our camera traps, which had good contrast, good IR lighting, good sharpness, good clarity, enough to get us timestamps, enough to get us what the species is, talking about the species. And then the model 2 was a little more refined, where we reduced the number of LEDs, IR LEDs on it. So it remains non-intrusive, it remains undetectable, yet produce some remarkable images, like a set of gores from Southeast Asia. And we're so proud to say that we're the first Indian company to have a deployment in Laos in Southeast Asia, where we got the beautiful herd of gores, which the locals never knew about. They just thought that they were cattle. There are cattle who are coming down from the forest to drink from their village pond. So this was a great opportunity for us. And finally, this is what it looks like right now: a complete product or something that is proven on field, working, and automatically tuned to your field conditions. If you wanted to behave a certain way, you give us a call, we'll get it for you. If you wanted to change it after deployment, give us a call, we'll get it done for you. So the idea of it being an affordable, available, approachable technology is now what we are doing on the phase number 3. We've created 10 units of this, sent it across different researchers, different CBC communities, different forest departments, to see what is working, what is not working, further tweaking it a little bit, so that once we launch it, we can confidently say that it has been tested across India for India. So what are the key takeaways? Number one was power. Since it is a standalone device, it does not get a lot of, gets no external electric supply. The lab power that we were getting was around 5 months. But once you put it on field, on the field conditions, the number of false triggers, the number of the temperature increasing, decreasing, the humidity, all had a big impact on field power. So we had a battery pack that could ideally last in the lab for 5 months, but on the field we found an average of 1.5 to 2 months. That's it. That is what that difference does. And the second is motion versus animal trigger. As I said, false triggers are aplenty. Even if in a cold climate, a warm wind blows by, the camera will click because it is a thermal sensor. It will check if there's a change in ambient temperature, and then trigger the camera. So if there's a blade of grass moving around, if there is something in the foreground moving across the camera, it will trigger it. So there's a lot of false triggers that we had to optimize the PI on, set it into motion, so that we can have lesser of these things play out. And currently data loss, that's a massive hurdle that we had to cross, because after deploying the camera trap for 5 to 6 months, waiting for it, just hoping it works, you find out that the data is corrupted, the SD card is corrupted, and that's a massive blowout. That's a massive blow for the researcher, for the budget of the project, for every single person who's associated with it. You spend 6 months of your life to the project, and you have nothing to show for it. That's a big thing that we have worked upon, and now finally in the clear for that. Weather is a big thing, especially one scenario where we had deployed it in Northeast. We had tied it across a tree, and we had a freak storm due to a cyclonic depression in Arabian Sea. Uh, Intense rainfall the entire night. And when we got to the deployment site the next day, the entire tree onto which the camera trap was strapped onto just fell down and into a landslide. We do not know what happened to it. We do not know the kind of data we got. We do not know if we need any improvements. So unpredictability on the field is a big concern, which I mean, if a tree falls down on which your camera trap is, there's literally nothing that can be done. So such reality on field is what taught us a lot. And theft, as I said, out of like 20, 25 camera, 30, 35 camera traps that we made, 12 were just stolen, nowhere to be found, stolen and sold or somewhere, I don't know. And at the end, field data is king. Whatever high quality images you take, however premium, however nuanced or photographically sound they look, they are nothing if they're not coming with proper field data, if they're not showing the timestamps, if they're not showing the temperature, the humidity, the moon phase, the time, the date, the location, then a pretty picture has zero value to it. Now, coming on to my push for creating Rex was to cater to habitat communities and be at the missing layer, uh, creating for the missing layer essentially. Now, this is where conservation fails, especially in interfaces, of course, where there is a lot of manual conflict interface of a protected land, fortress land with a village, protected areas with a city. That is where a lot of conservation failure happens. You will see a lot of times where roadkill has happened for a tiger, poisoning a tiger has come into play due to revenge killing, and I mean, a lot of things have happened on the boundaries where fortress and CBC meets. So that is one area where conservation fails. The other is incentives. As we all know, we have big packages given to villagers whose cattle is killed by a tiger, and that system is being exploited by the local communities, where they're forcibly sending the cattle into the forest land, where they are killed, of course, by a top apex predator, and then they demand compensation for that, incentives for that. And if you keep doing that, number one, the entire prey base of the particular species shifts. You'll get rampant grazing, decline of grassland areas, decline of the overall biodiversity of that zone. And of course, that will eventually impact the predator and you, the person who is living by the boundary themselves. And then the continuity of projects. So on a project timeline, good projects can only be done up to 6 months, not beyond that, because there is no budget for that. So if there is a community continuity on the kind of projects that you are having, then there is no real permanence of the results that you have created there, and that creates a huge block where 6 months you are giving it your all, you're working on the field, you are training people, you are educating the villagers, you're educating the tribal communities, learning from them, and then suddenly you are not there. So all the experiences, all the inputs that the community has put in just gets lost. And that comes to ownership value. Right now, villages, tribals, and the people who are living with the forests are treated as stakeholders. Once they're treated as stakeholders, it is assumed by the forest department, it is assumed by the system that it's their responsibility. And that is a very negative way of thinking, because if the forest benefits, they get to continue their lifestyle. If the forest declines, they need to be uprooted. They're literally, they need to move out of their ancestral land. They need to move out of their ancestral grazing land. So that is where ownership is lacking. Whatever policies are made using the data which is brought in by an external source, not from the villages, not from the tribal communities, and the decisions are made outside of the communities as well. So the real the real decision maker is not the communities, but the end impact, the person who's the people who are impacted the most are the communities. So we need to keep that in mind also, that it is their land that we are trying to better, and it is our responsibility that we are bringing the system in, we are bringing the camera traps in, and to make sure that they also understand that this is for their own good. And that's where trust plays a beautiful role here, because in I think 2 to 3 years ago there was a terrible case where a forest officer had threatened our local villagers that they have women of that community defecating on camera traps, and that was used as leverage to gain money, to gain power, basically. So then conservation activity of any kind, how much ever good it will bring, becomes a huge challenge because the trust is broken. How do you convince the tribal people that okay, this will not repeat again, this will not be, what happened in Corbett area will not happen in, let's say, Kabini? So how can you build this trust, sustain the trust, and not break it while doing essential data collection, while doing conservation, while keeping them in mind? And the last is patience. I've seen so many researchers who just get into the research field with full gusto, with full enthusiasm. But then when they get to learn, okay, I need to spend 6 months on field, 7 months on field, they just quietly back out, because they just don't have the patience to keep true to their project, keep true to their uh, mission. So these are the points that conservation fails. And yet, at the end of the day, you get stories like these: elephants being murdered, killed in cold blood because they accidentally wandered into a village, tigers being revenge killed, road kills. And the saddest part of it all is that the communities who are living with these animals for centuries have no say in the policies that we are making. And that is the gap that we are trying to breach. That is the gap we are trying to fill. If we are giving these technological advancements, this kind of power back to the communities, just imagine what kind of data that we will be collecting, the kind of thesis that will be put into the systems, that more practical policies are being pushed, that not only benefits the people who are sitting in an AC air conditioned room, the air conditioned offices benefit, but also the people who are living with these animals. I mean, there have been multiple cases, especially as I mentioned the Wagoba case, where they knew the leopard will come back. They knew for a fact that it will return. There is no way to pluck out a single leopard from its territory. Now we know that because of data, but these communities have been knowing it since centuries. And it's high time that we respect their knowledge, respect their cultures, so that we can gain 2 cents from them, create data, gain a new perspective, so that we can effectively conserve this immense, beautiful wildlife that we have in India. And of course, to sum it up, technology in India, in Indian conservation, must reduce friction, not add to it. It needs to be simple. It needs to be no fuss. You cannot just give a very expensive camera to a random person and say, okay, use it. We have given you the tools. We are not seeing data. It needs to be easy to use. It needs to be frictionless when employing. And where is the friction done is in field work, where forest guards already are overburdened. And then, of course, extra steps that you are putting into the system is equalizing to non-adoption. If you tell a forest guard, okay, you have to walk on this beat, but also have to spend half an hour tinkering with the camera trap that you don't, that we have given training for you now several years ago, you have to put it up, and we need the data. Of course, the forest guard will continue on his beat, do it for 1 or 2 days, and then he'll just see, okay, this is more hassle than good or benefit. I just stop adopting it. I've seen so many cases where camera traps in the box are just there in their cupboards because they just don't want to use it because it's so complex. Then maintenance and repair frictions. In remote locations, how will you get services? How will you get the technology there? And of course, limited spare parts because these are not manufactured in India at all. They're all imported from the US, from the UK, from China, where spare parts, where the parts even I don't understand because it's their IP, it's their intellectual property. So we are not able to really work on that. And of course, no local repair ecosystem. Since they are existing outside India, there is nobody in India to do that. Of course, there are third-party people who will snicker around with the device. Will try the best to work it, and it will work for a month or two and give out after that. So, of course, then trust friction is of course there. If I tell you that in your house I will be putting up a camera trap to monitor wildlife, number one issue will be a fear of surveillance, fear of misuse of data, and lack of transparency. They just do not know what the data is captured. They don't know where it will be used, who is seeing this. Will their entire privacy gets obliterated the moment a camera trap enters their forests. So it is very essential that us as scientists, us as enthusiasts, us as photographers respect the kind of privacy that they need. And that is where the decision making takes place, where every part of the decision asks one question first: does this reduce friction in the real world? Of course, if I want to put a 40 megapixel camera, I will put it. Apple technology available there. If I want to put in a 4G SIM card in, I will put it. But does this really reduce friction, or am I just in it for the money? That is a real question here. So any decision, be it for us as a technology manufacturer, you being an enthusiast, or a person who's interacting with the wildlife, interacting with the locals over there, your questions, your understanding the systems you're trying to put into place, are they reducing friction, or are they just to make you feel good as people? Because I mean, me myself and a lot of people who have interacted with are in the field to make themselves feel good, right? क्योंकि मैंने तो X number of झाड़ लगा दिए, मैं खुश हूँ, मेरा हो गया अभी. And that kind of mentality will not work on the real field. That is something that needs to change. And so what's ahead for us, right? So number one is in Feb end we'll be launching the Rex. Okay, so by the way, Rex stands for Remote Explorer, and let's see squeeze the words in. So Rex will be launching in Feb end of this year, followed by the Ansia. So Ansia is this box that we made for National Geographic filmmakers, co-developed by with Kenneth Lawrence, sorry, where we are using really high quality sensors to capture beautiful moments in the wild, ready for broadcast, ready to spread awareness. So that also will be launching in February. And this is what we are working on right now as a Prahari system. The other side is a elephant early warning system where it is non-intrusive, does not harm the animal, just alerts the villagers that okay, there is a elephant coming in, please head into your homes, please seek shelter. And what this is basically is a mesh device that it is placed on different points across the entire village. So any data entry, any ingress point where the elephant is coming in, it will start sounding an alarm, it will start flashing lights, so that the villages inside will know okay, there's an elephant coming in, better be safe, better head inside. So that will reduce the amount of deaths that you're seeing here. And this is co-developed with Keonjhar Forest Department. Big thanks to them for giving us valuable field information data for this. Of course, this is cheap, easy to use, replaceable, and basically no fuss. You just have to check it once a day, good to go. And lastly is the Rex Pro Alpha tests. Now, as I said, Forest Department is still having the norms of keeping a white flash unit. The Rex will be an IR black flash unit where it will be invisible to the naked eye and the wildlife. But since the Forest Department also needs white flash unit, so we are working on a white flash unit for them right now, or with labeled as a Rex Pro. So that is what we are working next. To finish, oh, good time. To finish, India does not need more technology. It needs better fit technology for Indian circumstances. The way forward is to build smaller, slower, more local technology, more cohesive technology, so that we can see real effects, we can see adaptability easier, more trust building with the forest department, with conservationists, and of course, anything you do on in the forest, in the grasslands, in any habitat, please observe before you build. I've seen, so I also consult a lot of homestays and ecotourism ventures, sorry, agrotourism ventures on how to build properly, how to do it. And oftentimes they're not, they're building their structures right on top of migration routes. And then they're complaining, okay, why is my, cottage being destroyed every day? So please observe before you build anything, be it technology, be it science, be it practices, photographs, or anything. Please observe first. And then, who does this really help? Is it helping anybody? Are you reducing friction? Who does it? Who is the end consumer of this? That is the core question. So I think this is a good time to kind of stop here also. And yeah, that's it for my time. Glad to have you part of this and hope I made sense to you all. So please, if there's any question, please feel free to ask.
Yeah, hello, sir. So I think there are a few questions in the chat box. So I'll just announce them right now. So Tushar is asking, what ethical guidelines should conservation practitioners follow while using camera traps and early warning systems?
Yeah, so beautiful question again. I mean, circling back to the question of building a trust, I would say first, instead of just walking in with the forest department, putting it and just saying, okay, this will take photos. Talk to the local communities, get integrated with them. Tell them, okay, this is what a camera trap is. If you have any fear, I will personally be coming in, showing you the photographs that it has taken. If you don't like any photographs, if you are being photographed, it will be deleted. So that builds essential trust, but the villagers are less likely to steal the camera traps because oftentimes they're not, it's easy money for them, right? So they'll want to steal it. So once they see the real life implications of a camera trap, where will it benefit them? How will it benefit them? Is there a fear of privacy? Is there something they need to do? Can they be participants in this scenario? Then there's high likely chance of the data going or the field study going successful, and them also being more into it, more enthusiastic, giving you their knowledge, their ancestral knowledge. Regarding early warning systems, of course, the Prahari that I showed you earlier is a non-data collecting model. It is just an alarm system that we have to make it cheap, very easy to service, easy to replace. So that doesn't collect any data points. Of course, in that scenario, also you need to talk to the village people. You need to talk to the communities living on ground. To okay, this is what we are doing. This is what we think will work here. Of course, just put it there for a month or so. If it is working, great. But if it is not working, we would like your 2 cents, your time to help us explain why it is not working. Yeah.
Okay, so Arif has a question. He says, how can forest departments, researchers, and private initiatives collaborate more effectively?
Right. So, so again, a beautiful question. Again, great questions. So, collaboration is multifold here. You need the collaboration of again the local players. If you are a forest department person, there's an air of privilege. Okay, okay, I am a forest department guy. You need to follow whatever I'm saying. So I think removing that kind of ego is extremely crucial, so that the villagers and the local communities also start respecting you, start knowing what you are doing. And if you're a field researcher associated with the university first, if you're not a, if you want to get into research, and get associated with the university first, they'll usually have a guide assigned for you who is working on the field more, will guide you and handhold you into learning things, learning the ropes, etc. And if you're a field researcher going on field, you have much more flexibility. You're not tied to the forest department. You're not tied to any commitments or stuff like that, like, apart from your own project. So there you can freely take this. The challenge to educate the local communities, learn from the local communities about their cultural practices, learn more about their lives, what kind of problems apart from conflict that they are facing, where your knowledge can come into place. So that is where collaborations really shine.
So, Amrit has a question. How can students or researchers get involved with initiatives like Pardus?
So, great question. So, if you're a student or just an enthusiast in general, I would say first get acquainted with citizen science programs, eBird, Merlin, iNaturalist. These are beautiful places where you can upload checklists, contribute to with the global data collection efforts that we are having. And especially if you're a researcher, do get in touch with me personally. I'm sure somewhere, please reach out to me any way you can. And if you want to get involved with us, and you're an engineer or a techie, we'd love to have you on board and help us out. But if you're into the core sciences and with the researchers, uh, as a researcher, then I would say that just go on field and be the best self that you are, and we'll help you out in any way we can. If it's in the terms of technology, if it's in the terms of connections, if it's in terms of support on field, we'd be happy to help.
Okay, so does anybody have any other questions?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hi.
Sir, I'm Kirtika from the team of Global Wildlife Fair. And what I want to ask you is that how was your experience of exhibiting with us in the fair?
Oh, it was really wonderful actually. Got to meet with a lot of tour operators, got to meet with a lot of NGOs, got to meet with a lot of hotel and lodge owners also. Because at the end of the day, the exposure that I alone myself get is very minimal. So once you get involved to such different perspectives or different angle of views, etc., your brain starts working on different solutions and how you can help them, right? So there have been so many beautiful moments where the visitors have helped me out with field data studies, where I have helped them out with some queries, etc. So it's a really cohesive, beautiful place where the entire wildlife community can be under one area without being concerned in our own silos.
So, does anybody have any other questions? I think not. So, thank you, sir, for a thoughtful and insightful session and for sharing the work that Pardus is doing to make
Sorry,
life.
just a minute. I think there are more questions. Sorry.
Oh, okay, okay. Wait, let's just check. Okay. So, Anish is asking, what are the biggest mistakes made when wildlife technology is designed without field experience in India?
So, I mean, the best example is see, there is no doubting it. These technologies are effective. They are being adapted, but the rate at which they are being adapted is massive, because you get these very expensive systems. For example, the elephant AI system that I talked to you about is 2.5 to 3 lakhs, right? The amount of capital that is required is massive. And since the ability to procure data is so technical, is so challenging, not really approachable, it takes time, right? It take for the AI system to get into play, it took more than a year to implement, see if it is working or not. And in that year, there have been so many deaths. of elephants on railway. You have that really horrible train crash in West Bengal that happened last year, where I think 12 or 13 elephants were stacked on the cow shredder, which is really, really gruesome. So the biggest drop mistakes is having that amount of time given to something without actually seeing results on field. So if we are able to create technologies, create solutions, create practices that are already in line with the Indian kind of philosophy, the Indian mindset, then we are seeing a deployments of within a week, within 2 weeks or a month, and that kind of field time cost is much more affordable to us.
Okay. So Kashish also has a question, and she says, "How does Pardus ensures its tools remain ethical while still being effective for research and monitoring?"
Right, great question. So, I mean, talking about the components that we're using in the Rex and the Prahari systems, both of these systems are manufactured wholly and solely by us. Of course, the silicon chips, of course, as we know, is monopoly of China. So we're at the mercy of for them in terms of that. But other than that, everything in terms of testing it on field, checking if the component is working or not. Even the smallest things like plastics, for example, we're using 100% recycled polymer so that we're able to reduce the plastic workload on the environment. So stuff like we are using that on to remain a little ethical. Now, I wouldn't say that we're completely ethical, we're completely green. That's a lie. So we are, I would say, 70 to 80% quite ethical and quite green on our initiatives. And your second part of the question was, I think, how effective is it? And I would say it's pretty effective because, especially in the CBC model that I explained, because these communities are only exposed to technologies like camera traps when a researcher or a forest department person walks into the picture carrying the camera traps. But through this, idea is to create more data on field so that tribals can be in charge of the data, not just okay, sit, wait for a person to come in, collect data, and go off, and suddenly there's a new policy in place. By doing Rex, by doing Pardus, the idea is to give the power back to these communities, to give power back to them, so that they are essentially participants in the policies that they are trying to push, so that their lives can be better impacted.
Okay. So I think there are not many questions left now. Uh, so thank you, sir, for a thoughtful and insightful session and for sharing the work that Pardus is doing to make wildlife technology more ethical, accessible, and field ready in India. The recording of this webinar will be circulated shortly. Thank you for your time and participation. We look forward to having you all for our upcoming webinars.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, sir.